Hey guys, it's Cara, aka The Pretty Little Lawyer, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by, and if this is not your first time here, thank you so much for coming back. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you all the work it took to transform my office and create these built-in bookcases. If this is not your first time here, then you're used to me opening my videos like this. But now the office looks like this. If this kind of transformation is your jam, or you're looking to learn how to build your own bookcases, stick around. If you like what you see, make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up or leaving a comment below. And as always, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let's get into the content. I started this project by removing the baseboards. I wanted to make sure that my bookcases were flush with the wall, so it was important to remove anything that would obstruct that. In order to do this, I scored the caulk starting with the quarter round, and then I used a pry bar. I don't know the terminology, but I'll use this little tool to pry out the quarter round from the wall, and then I did the same process for the actual baseboards. I'll make sure to list out all the tools with their proper names and all the supplies I used to complete this project, along with links in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. At this stage, it's very important that you keep everything. That doesn't mean that you're going to use it, but it could save you from having to buy duplicates at the end of the project. I removed the baseboards from the right and back wall, and then I'll show you what I did with the left wall later. The next thing I did was assemble all of the bookcases. I ended up using 4 bookcases, and I went with the Gersby bookcases from IKEA instead of the Billy bookcases because that's what my measurements allowed for. This project requires a lot of measurements and math. If that is not your forte, you are not alone. I absolutely hate measuring. I do a lot of girl math when I'm hanging photos on the wall, but that is not feasible for this project. You have to measure. I used measuring tape, and then I also used a laser measurer to make sure that I got precise measurements for every step of this project. I will put all of the measurements that I took before purchasing the wood on the screen here so that you can see what you need to know before you go out and start purchasing wood for your base and your wall supports. I would suggest you go ahead and pay the extra $1 or $2 for quality wood. It will make a huge difference in your cuts. Once I had my measurements for the base, I was ready to go ahead and tackle the left wall. I wasn't removing the entire baseboard, so I measured up to where my base would extend, and then I used a multi-tool to cut down that far on the base, and then I removed it using the same method I showed you earlier in the video. Next, I assembled my bases and then made sure they were level. I ended up doing 2 bases. One was 6 feet long and one was 4 feet long to cover the 10-foot span of the wall. My bases are very narrow, so there's really no risk of the bookcases falling in between them, but I have seen people add center supports to their base. Then it was time to put the bookcases up on the base and then add in the wall supports. I secured my wall supports to studs, and then I secured my bookcases to the wall supports through the back. I also secured the bookcases to the wall using the standard IKEA brackets that come with all of their furniture. Then I measured the ceiling for accuracy. I was able to use the same dimensions as the base to create the top supports. These supports would be used to secure my crown molding later, so I made sure that they were also secured into studs in the wall. This is me securing the last bookcase to the last wall support. So very quickly into this project, the outfits stopped matching. All of the effort that was required to complete this project came out of my wardrobe. So anyway, we persevered. What I used to do this was a countersink bit. So first I pre-drilled a hole, and then on top of the hole that I pre-drilled, I used the countersink bit. That created a divot, and that's what my wood screw went into, so that I could later fill that with wood filler and you would no longer see the hole where the wood screws went. Also, it's not shown here and I can't find the footage anywhere, but you'll be able to see in the next clip that on this particular bookcase, I also made a cutout for the outlet. Next, I secured the bookcases to each other. I did this by using small pieces of wood at different intervals down the bookcase. For each of these screws, I also used a countersink bit, so all of these holes were filled in the end and you did not see them. On the right side of the bookcases, I created a wall support with perpendicular wood pieces at similar intervals to where I connected the bookcases. Because there was no stud on the right wall, I ended up securing this wall support to the back wall and then used these perpendicular pieces to adhere my plywood to. Then I started making cuts in my plywood. I created some sample pieces just to ensure that my measurements were correct, and then I remeasured. Guys, I'm telling you, I hate measuring. It is my least favorite thing, but a 1/4 inch could derail this project. Please, please, please. If you don't take anything else from this video, take from me that you need to measure everything. Next, I started securing the plywood to the bookcases. I used wood glue first and then a brad nailer. Funny story, this is actually my first time ever using a brad nailer and I was very excited about it. Everyone tells you to be careful when you tell them you're purchasing a saw, but I found that this was probably the most dangerous tool I own. Then I drew out my arches. I will link videos below on how to do this because I kind of botched this process and I don't want to give you the wrong information. But the method that I used was perfect, and as you can see, the measurements lined up wonderfully. I just put the plywood up before I made the cuts to make sure that the opening was accurate and to make sure that I had enough left on the side to secure the plywood to the wall support. I also numbered each of my arches because the distance between the bookcases on the ends was different from the distance between the bookcases in the center, so that just made it easy to remember where everything needed to go. Then I used a jigsaw for the first time. It was horrible, but I actually was able to fix everything with a detail sander, so if that is your dilemma, don't worry, you can fix it. Then I just went about trimming the bookcases. If you are using IKEA bookcases, one of the ways to make them look more elevated is to add some trim to the front of the bookcases and make the shelves look thicker. So that's what I did. I actually ended up cutting each piece individually because there is going to be some variation by literally a smidge for each shelf, and you want these fits to be snug so that you don't have gaps in between your shelves and the center of your bookcases. Then I spent several hours wood filling, not just the holes, but in between the plywood. And also, once I put the arches up, I spent some time wood filling. And then after I looked at everything, I spent some more time wood filling. And then when that was finally done, I sanded for probably 5 hours. I decided I wanted wallpaper because I didn't really like the back of the Gersby bookcases. So I actually added the wallpaper to my wall behind the arches. I did this before securing the arches to the bookcase because I didn't want to have to try to fit the wallpaper behind the arch, and it was the best decision I made. I was able to find the tiniest piece of trim at Lowe's to connect the bottom of the arch to the top of the bookcase on the left, and I was so excited. Then I primed the bookcases. The lighting was terrible those couple of days. It was raining, and so I just did the best I could with filming. I actually didn't film the priming because it nearly sent me to an early grave, so here is a warning for that. Make sure you are in a well-ventilated space, which, to be fair, I was. I had all of the windows on the top floor of my house open, as well as the vents in both bathrooms running, and I still nearly passed out. So just make sure you are in a well-ventilated space and perhaps have somewhere to flee for the night. I actually went to my parents' house and slept for the night and came back the next day to paint. So here I am painting the next day. Obviously I was well enough to continue, but it actually frightened me. After I got the first coat of paint on, I noticed several spots where I hadn't done the best job with the primer, so I went back in with the primer. I used the Zinsser Bin 123 shellac based primer, not the water base, not the oil base, the shellac base, and it actually worked very well in the spots where I applied it correctly. But because it was so potent, I actually went out and bought pre-primed trim to just go ahead and paint for the decorative pieces because I could not stand the smell. Once I painted all of the trim, my dad came over and helped me put it up. So here we are just installing the crown molding. So as you'll remember, I have that top piece on the top behind the arches that is the same dimensions as the base. That's what we secured the crown molding to. Also, on the right side of the screen, you can clearly see the imperfections where the arches meet the other plywood on the bookcase. I used a 1x4 in the middle and two 1x6s on the sides to cover up those imperfections. So he's helping me add all of that to the front of the bookcase. I have a closet on the right side of my room that really inhibited the depth of this project. So I actually ended up not putting the baseboard back on, but I did reinstall the quarter round on the floor. I added some sconces. I actually got these from Amazon. They are battery operated and they come in a pack of 2. So I didn't have to hardwire anything, but if you are going to hardwire something, you would want to do that at a much earlier step, probably before you add the plywood to the bookcases. This was my favorite part of the project because I could not believe that something like this actually existed, but this is real wood. However, it is cut so thin that it is bendable and you can cut it with scissors. It's obviously not that special. People use it to cover up imperfections on furniture, but I didn't know it existed. And I used it to backfill the arches so that you wouldn't see the wall supports. This part actually took me quite a bit of time because I decided not to use the 3M adhesive because if you've ever used it, you know once it's up, it's stuck. But I actually just cut it so that it is so snug within the arches that it won't move, rather than having to use the adhesive and possibly make an error. So after a final round of caulking and touch-up paint, I finally finished the bookcases, and this is how they look. I cannot believe I'm the one who built these. In what universe? But I fully believe that you can do it. So if you have any questions, I hope this video was helpful, and as always, meet me in the comments if you need more.